Hello everyone, Jak Syn here on behalf of tourfiend.com and Future Daze, and today it's another exciting episode of Artist Interviews. Today we're sitting with Brad Kinnan, filmmaker and director of DYNMC. How are you doing today, Brad?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you for having me on, Jackson. Great to see your face.
It's good to see your face too. I know right now with everything going on and all the social distancing and everything, it's hard to stay connected as much. But we're making it work, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's like just becoming less, more brave and just venturing out. Like, you know, it's always funny to like have conversations on screens because it's not in real time, and it becomes very kind of like awkward at times. But it's just, I think it's a great time to be awkward on screens because it's more fun than not, you know, not seeing your friends and not seeing the people that you love and care for. So. It's teaching us a lot about how technology can enhance our lives rather than take away from it.
This is very true because a lot of us right now, we are adapting and making the most of the situations that we're in.
I mean, there's no good timing for any pandemic or anything, but in terms of just the ability to be able to carry on, you know, with your everyday life and feel like you're still involved with people's lives, it's absolutely like a godsend that we have this kind of ability now. And also, you know, just you know, we're still able to express ourselves really because we can show people what we're doing and they can engage with that. And it can be as simple as doing something like this interview. It's like things are still happening, guys. There's a lot going on. It's just now we're using a kind of a different platform to do that, and it's a great exercise. I think it's almost like a meditative experience.
That's exactly right. So today we're going to ask you a couple of questions and see where it goes from here. Are you ready to do this?
Yeah, let's go. Let's do it. I got a brain on my head that's working, so we'll see what happens.
All right. What are three of your most memorable moments as a filmmaker and director?
Well, it's hard to narrow it down. There's been so many wonderful moments that, you know, have happened through that process. But I would say kind of to, you know, just to put three out there that are really great that I'll never forget and that mean a lot to me. The first one is kind of like the first big job that I got kind of as a freelance director and cameraman. And it was actually shooting a commercial in Hawaii for this like seafood company. So it was really cool because we got to fly out there. We got put up in like a beautiful like high-rise in Waikiki. And that was kind of the first time that I felt like, oh wow, like this is kind of like making it, you know, I get to do this for work. I get to go on vacation in Hawaii and shoot something. So that was a really big one. And that was actually a formative experience for DYNMC because my friend Adam Bussell, who I founded the company with about 3 or 4 years ago now, he was with me on the trip. And so it was actually on that trip that we kind of were, you know, thinking about making something more than just us being like freelance videographer guys, you know, hired for pay kind of. And it kind of helped formalize like our vision, I guess, for the next like 5 years of our careers. So that was incredibly memorable. And I spent a lot of time in Hawaii, like a couple years after that, working for various clients and things. So I love Hawaii. Can't wait to go back when I can travel again. And another, my number two, or it's not in order here. There's no one that's like better or worse than the other one. But another one was really big one actually that kind of pertains to how, you know, the scene that kind of you and I met under Jackson was being the videographer, filming rather, at the FM84 midnight show in downtown Los Angeles, like 2.5 years ago at the Globe Theater. And that was after I had worked with FM84 on Running in the Night, and like being backstage and like seeing like 2,000 people like singing along to a song that I had shot a video for was pretty incredible. And just kind of that moment where you're like, oh wow, like, you know, these guys, like they've got like star chips, like people love their work, and it felt like, oh okay, like I made a really good decision just taking that job, you know, as a freelance videographer at the time, because ultimately through that it led to a lot more for me and great beautiful friendships with all those guys, you know, Ollie, Call, Tim, Tyler, and it's taken me on a journey in that kind of little sphere of like music fandom and 80s culture and everything. So that was another one. And then the other one actually is more recently, and it is kind of like a completely, it's still music related, but last year I got hired, DYNMC got hired, so our whole team, we got hired to shoot this classic rock band from Canada called Stampeders, and actually the band's, one of the frontmen is actually Holly Dodson, Parallels, it's her dad. So we got to go on tour with like this actual classic rock band from the 70s who, you know, played with Fleetwood Mac and Steely Dan, and we got to go on the road all throughout Canada from the east to the west coast and, you know, basically document these guys' stories. And it was just pretty incredible as like a very, very big classic rock fan and growing up with a lot of those artists that they had played with and associated themselves with. It was just kind of like a surreal experience. Like I was given something by life to tell someone's story at, you know, not the end of their career, but like after the glory days and the heydays, you know, catching up with them later on the road and seeing also the power of art and friendship because they've been in a band together for like 50 years.
Those are some really great memories. So going on the road with these artists, would you say there's a big difference like going on the road with them as opposed to like directing something in a setting, in a certain setting that where you're like one-on-one with somebody, like going on road, like filming them? What kind of journey is that like?
Yeah, it's definitely a completely different experience because you kind of like become, it's like being on a film set, like filming a feature film where you're just stuck with people for multiple weeks at a time, if not months. And it really becomes more than just like, oh, I'm here to show up and tell you what to do. You're a hired, you know, actor, you're a model, whatever. You're my crew members. It was really more like becoming part of their like family and kind of like seeing like this kind of really getting down to like less of a like kind of like a the word I'm trying to look for is you view your artists and your inspirations, especially in music and film, as being like, you know, these crazy, unattainable, like characters, you know, these people that are so accomplished and so prolific. But then when you actually spend time with a lot of these people, and I've been very privileged to meet so many incredibly talented, but also incredibly humble artists, that you just kind of all of a sudden feel like you're just hanging out with someone. And it's different, that like starstruckness, not to say that I don't still get starstruck, but it kind of has made me realize that like everybody is kind of in this like together, you know what I mean? We're all humans, we all have different gifts, but when you spend that much time on the road with someone, you get to know about all the weird quirks of people. And when you have a camera on these people, it really can be quite entertaining, especially when they're charismatic, like many artists are. And they're entertainers. That's what they've done their whole life. So they're going to entertain you even just during dinner.
And it's such an amazing thing to hear all of these stories, I'm sure. All of these artists, like over the years and everything that they've done. And like you were saying, like creating an entertaining atmosphere. And I'm sure hearing all of these stories and seeing all of these people and capturing all of these moments has really been an amazing thing for you. I know earlier you were mentioning about the FM 84 show in the midnight show here in LA. Like, I'm sure that was just amazing to be a part of that, to be able to capture that. Like, what was going through your head? Like, what were you feeling at that time?
It was, I mean, it was really neat because, you know, I'd always like, I've been going to concerts, you know, since I was in high school and mostly in college, because I grew up in a very like rural part of northern Michigan and we really didn't have any big music venues at all. But in college, I would go to all sorts of venues in Detroit and I would stand in the line and I would see, you know, the photographer or the press, you know, with their passes, like going in before the show started, before general admission was let in. And I think that I always like kind of like thought they were like the coolest people ever. And like, that was something I wanted to do someday, you know, be able to be part of like the creative team behind like a lot of these bands and help kind of paint some sort of visual, you know, element to their brand or their performance or whatever. So when I turned up to that concert, you know, I did a lot of like very grassroots kind of things up to that point. And, you know, just seeing the line out the door and going up, you know, the sold out show, and like, you know, being with my friend and, you know, saying, hey, he's here to, you know, shoot the bands, like, you know, he's on the list or whatever. That was just such a cool moment for me, because I think it was probably the first time I'd ever gone to a, you know, event that was of like on a world-class scale, and seeing the excitement out of everybody there, and a lot of my friends being part of it as well, being able to see, you know, somebody I worked with like perform in front of people, and they're singing along with the lyrics and stuff, like the video that I was editing, you know, and it's just like, wow, that was really, really cool. And it was kind of the beginning of like me like becoming friends with Ollie Ride, because we got to meet and we kept in touch. So it was a wonderful networking opportunity too. And also it was just amazing to see these bands that pretty much, you know, started grassroots the same way as we all have kind of, and worked their way up to that. And it kind of showed how much hard work pays off.
I'm sure that was an amazing experience, like being able to be there in that moment and have a chance to speak with all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm a huge fan of their music, but like I'm sure being there in that moment, being able to capture that for them was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really fantastic, and it was great because, you know, I don't know, it's like forever preserved, you know, for future generations to enjoy. And I feel like a lot of people, with that one event in particular, there's been so many good shows. I mean, when I was in London with Ollie this past fall, thank goodness we got to do that before this all happened. But I remember that experience very fondly because of that reason. And hopefully we'll do it again in some other way, in some other capacity, when this is figured out. Someday we'll have 2,000 people together again. Imagine that.
Well, that day I look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is your favorite project that you've worked on?
Instead of it being like specifically my project, I thought it'd be kind of interesting to talk about something that I was involved with actually even before I moved to LA. So now, like 5.5 years ago or so. It's crazy to say that, but just to be involved with it was really, really fundamental for me. And that was working in the locations department on a film called Lost River that Ryan Gosling actually wrote and directed in Detroit, Michigan. And that was the first like Hollywood set that I was on, like right out of college. I literally graduated, and then they reached out to one of my professors, and the professor recommended a few people from the film program at Michigan State University. And I was one of them, and I had to, you know, do an interview on the phone with the locations manager on the film. And it was just so like cool because it was a really star-studded project. I mean, Ryan Gosling was on set. Matt Smith was one of the stars. Saoirse Ronan, who's been nominated for multiple Oscars in her career. Eva Mendes, Christina Hendricks, like all these people I knew from other projects. Like it was just like insane to like be on a film set. And like I said before, when you're working on a feature film from start to finish, you become like part of the family of the film. And since it was a slightly smaller set, you know, and it was being shot on location in Detroit, everybody just really got to know each other well. And everybody treated each other so good. Like it was just such an incredible experience for me, with like zero like real film set experience, to be treated as an equal and to be given the opportunity to like help the production designer out, or help Ryan out, or you know, get Christina Hendricks you know, like some piece of like wardrobe she needed for a scene. Like literally we were able to touch and interact with like everything in that movie. And I don't know if you've ever seen it before, but it's a pretty weird movie. It's very like surreal and dark. And have you seen Lost River? Or
you know what? I haven't had a chance to check out Lost River, but I will definitely have to do that as soon as possible.
Check it out. And when I went to go see the film, because it was kind of had a limited release in theaters, you know, seeing my name in the credits, like, and I think it was off Sunset somewhere, and I was just like, wow, what a cool like opportunity. And yeah, just basically that kind of taught me a lot of the fundamental things about how filmmaking kind of works, and basically how to run a really tight, like good set, you know, because I've been on a lot of sets out here and it's just very incendiary, and like, you know, nobody really communicates well. They're all there just for the money. And like, it felt like this project was truly a passion project. And everybody that was there was like living it to the fullest. It just made everything feel really accessible to me at an early stage. So it was really fundamental for me to experience that. So that's why it's my favorite thing that I've kind of been associated with.
That is such a great gift, like you being able to be a part of all of that, you being getting that firsthand experience that really kind of helped push you forward. Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
Inspired, yeah, it was inspiring too. I think that's really important as well. It was just kind of like the dreaminess of being able to like literally bring all these people together to make art. Because when you see the film, you know, it's very, you can just tell it was completely artistic. Like it's very unconventional, and I really appreciated that about it.
What was the drive behind getting you into filmmaking?
Yeah, so the origin story. I mean, so I grew up in, like I said, a very, very like rural town. My parents didn't have cable. Like we had a very limited collection of like VHS films. And I had a friend who actually I spoke with last night. So it's interesting how life works, because, you know, like all these people kind of bubble up, you know, into your mind, and then also you're talking about them, you know, on an interview. But this dear friend of mine, Patrick Kelly, who I kind of did a bunch of my really, really like early, like middle school, high school kind of film things with. He was actually making like this home video thing called Commando Kill. And basically he ripped off the plot of like Escape from New York. You know, he was basically Snake Plissken. He had like long hair and he had like a Nerf gun. And his brothers were like super creative too. So they would like write this little like theme song on GarageBand, and then his other brother would like film it with like a little handy cam, and then he was the star. And so he was doing these like little films, and he even had like a fake cigar or something when he was like 13. I'm like, damn, dude, I would never be able to do that in my house. But he was just kind of this portal into like, oh, you can create all this stuff at home. And so he kind of brought me in on it, and we started off doing a lot of like claymation kind of things, and something I haven't done in a long time, which I would love to get back into, but it's very time consuming. And I've kind of just gotten more into like, you know, the more like visual, you know, practical kind of effect stuff. But like we were doing claymation, like because there wasn't animation. You know, so that was kind of part of it. And then it was also just, I guess also working at, I used to volunteer in high school and college at a film festival in Northern Michigan called the Traverse City Film Festival. And that was my first exposure to like people coming together to like watch movies collectively, and just like a complete like moment for me to realize, oh, like this is a well-respected thing to do professionally. And it just like seeing people's kind of like fascination with, you know, movies. Because once again, I wasn't exposed to a ton of that stuff when I was young, just because there wasn't a lot of movie theaters around and there wasn't TV for me to watch much. But I just think that those two things, like being around the film community, the cool people and the eclectic mix of people, the diverse range of talents from all art, you know, music, sculpture, acting, writing. I mean, it was just an all-inclusive kind of thing that just put everything in this cool box that just was super stimulating. And so between, you know, the fundamental years of making claymation, action, you know, Escape from LA spin-offs, and then working at a film festival, that's kind of what fueled my interest. And of course, getting my first camera and stuff and messing with like iMovie and just like starting to make like silly things like consistently.
Well, we all start somewhere, you know, and it's great that you were in part of that collective, you know, like where you started, you know, you started off with that, like when you're doing your claymation, things like that.
Yeah, collaboration was always part of it.
It's amazing how, you know, being in that kind of collective, like, you know, you're talking about like, you know, doing the visual arts, you know, the writing, the directing, all of that. You know, all of this stuff, it goes hand in hand. It's all these different forms of art that they really kind of like cement you into what you want to be as you get older. So it's great to see that was that big inspiration behind what pushed you to do what you're doing today.
Yeah, and I think it also kind of because like early on it was like a team effort. Like, you know, I would recruit my cousins to like help me be actors, and my sister, and you know, the other, you know, one of my neighbor friends, he would like help me build like the fort, like tree fort that like the bandits were hiding out in for our little, like, we did this like first person shooter thing like way before, like, you know, maybe, I don't know, maybe like Doom was out at that time, but we were like running through the woods with like sticks that were supposed to, I think it was because we were playing Halo, and there was like a stick that was supposed to be a sniper rifle. and we did like a voiceover for it, and you know, acquired sniper rifle. You know what I mean? It's just like a stick, and you know, I'm out like in the distance and like pretending to, you know, keel over or something. I mean, you know, just hilarious. I think it was called Dude Hunt or something.
Well, I would love to see that sometime. You're gonna have to send
I
that
have
to
all
me.
these things archived. They're not like really on the public display case, but like I have a lot of stuff like on YouTube that I can unearth at any given time. You know, a social function. Hey, look at this thing. You know, I mean, I haven't deleted anything from my YouTube from like the beginning. You can see like the beginning, like developing, you know, stages of like all the silly stuff I was doing. But really, that's the big thing. It's just a good idea.
That's very true. I mean, you are, you know, conveying your art in any way that you can. Like, it doesn't have to be like the best looking thing.
Really good stuff is always because the idea was good and the people working on it together were really resourceful. And I think resourcefulness is also super, super important for good things, good art, because when you're forced to like kind of problem solve, it just becomes more, I don't know, it's like the DIY element of it is like really, really important. Once again, you can just tell when like somebody really was like, their heart was behind something, movies, film, music, anything.
What are you looking forward to accomplishing the most moving forward?
Definitely like finishing a couple narrative things that I started in the last year and a half. Of course, you know, right now production has been altogether mostly halted on everything, with the exception of we're possibly going to be doing some like remote shoots and stuff. And it's really interesting, the environment now, because agencies are like looking for people that have cameras and like access to like talent, like maybe their family members or their roommates or something like that, to be able to like shoot things quarantine safe, like social distancing safe. So, you know, obviously there's a lot of other things that we want to be able to do once we can get back out there. So with those things, the number one thing that I'm working on right now is kind of this science fiction horror, like TV pilot length film. I've kind of teased it a little bit. I had like a teaser that came out like 6 or 7 months ago, but basically we still have to shoot half of it. So right now it's really interesting because it's, you know, I'm basically stuck with this like half finished project, and you know, it's not very motivating because you're like, oh, well, I still have to film half the other half, and when am I going to do that? But instead of just kind of like letting time go on, I've actually been working on that and cutting it together, and I'm actually really excited about how it turned out, because it was kind of like the first like big narrative thing that I was doing like as a director on my own, outside of like doing the music videos and short films. Like it's almost half of feature length. It's like a 30-page script. So it was a tremendous undertaking. And like anybody, when you're doing something new, you're a little nervous. You're like, oh man, like, you know, like, is it good enough? Is it good enough? But then like you realize it doesn't matter, just do it. And it'll speak for itself and you'll build off that. So I'm just kind of trying to just keep myself motivated and working on that. And I'm really looking forward to having, you know, hopefully by the end of the year, if not early next year, something really fun and narrative that kind of speaks to a lot of my influences. And you know, I think not a lot of people are going to expect to see it. They're like, whoa, where'd that come from? You know, that's what happens when you're in quarantine. You start to work on all these things that you put off, you know, before. So yeah, so I'm really excited to share that. And I'm also just really excited to, as from the company side, to, because we started representing a bunch of directors. We have a whole like roster of directing talent all, you know, from totally different backgrounds. We've got somebody who worked for College Humor, directing comedy sketches. We had a guy who did AT&T, like, you know, national TV spot. We have this kind of like experimental DIY filmmakers, worked with like Best Coast. And then another guy who's done a bunch of stuff with like rappers and things like that. So I'm really, really excited to like have all these people working under the umbrella that I started with Adam back in Hawaii, you know, like just having those people already on board and having them excited about our brand is like, I can't wait until we can be like, hey, this is a dynamic production. This director is working with us on this, you know. Meanwhile, we're shooting something over, you know, in, I don't know, Europe somewhere with that director. So I'm really excited for the representation of, once again, the collaborative spirit that's really been part of my process since the beginning.
That's amazing. Like you know, I know you're like a little bit earlier you were mentioning the movie length pilot that you were working on. For people out there who don't know yet, what project is that?
Oh yeah, so it's called Fall Break 18 right now. Kind of a working title, maybe the title, we'll see. We're kind of laughing because it's like 18 is like 2 years ago. But my joke was like, it's the 18th movie in the Fall Break series, right? Because it's kind of based on like a bunch of, you know, B movie horror things and stuff like that. And just to give him a shout out, you've met my friend Tristan and Jess, I think, Tristan Peach and Jess Johns. They actually co-wrote it. I kind of helped them develop the story. So they're really the screenwriters and the people that put the dialogue together. But so it's called Fall Break 18, and you can find that on social media. It's a little dormant right now because we're in post-production on that first half. So I'm, you know, just kind of basically creating the film itself now rather than being able to go and finish shooting it. But we have some cool content on there you can check out. There is a teaser that's online as well. But the other really exciting thing about it that I should mention is that we actually have a monster in the film that was actually made by this special effects artist who's actually worked on like Gremlins and like Critters. He like designed the Critters from Critters. Like that was his like, that was Critters and the Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Those were like his two huge things that he did. But he worked on just a slew of like just amazing like sci-fi movies and stuff. I think he worked on 300 even. He made like an animatronic wolf for 300. So we met through a client, like one of his daughters was a client of mine. She's a musician. And so we just kind of basically, I knew this guy here, and then I knew these people that were great writers and actors. And so I just kind of, you know, decided to just kind of wing it in a sense and just figure out how to make something, you know, with basically no budget. We did have a little bit of fundraising that occurred, but, you know, just out of pure passion and zeal for, you know, making something bigger and making something that you don't see as much with like a puppet. Like we just wanted to be, you know, do gore effects practically, puppet, you know, practically. And I think that, you know, like once again, the audience, so, you know, the people that like that kind of stuff, like me, they'll be like, oh yeah, that's sweet. Like, why don't we see more puppets? They can be cool. Puppets are cool.
Well, I've seen the trailer. I've seen the teaser. I thought it was pretty awesome. I can't wait to see the full project. I'm looking forward to that. You know what? And it's so great to hear you say that. I know right now with all the uncertainty and everything happening, everything on the great, as I like to call it now, the great pause. It's I think now more than ever, it's our time to be as creative as we can be. And I really want to see that monster.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. We do have test footage of it, but you will see the monster. I'll have to, once we get a good like test shot of it, I'll send you something just to tease you a little bit.
It sounds great.
Hopefully, I'm assuming you have a tough stomach for that kind of stuff because it's pretty disgusting.
Well, bring it on.
All right, man. I mean, you got Night of the Living Dead behind you. Like,
oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. George Romero, come on, you know what's going on.
one of my all-time favorite directors, George A. Romero.
Oh yeah.
Bless his soul. The godfather of the zombie genre.
R.I.P. man. And such good commentary behind all of his films too. They were always so like, deeper than just a gory horror slasher movie. There was like some serious thought put into those archetypes and it's visual metaphor essentially, which is great. It's great to inject little like pieces of reality. I mean, that's why all my favorite horror movies, they're all like there's all some sort of like little underlying message there rather than just a hack and slash experience. Personally.
Exactly. It's those little nuances here and there, those little things that you pick up on, and then later on you find out, oh well, it's like this movie was, it was made, it had its own story, but also it had this underlying message below it. Like what he was talking about his movie Land of the Dead. That was very much a reflection of the Bush administration, when he was talking about like our time in the country, where he felt like the rich were rich and the poor were poor. Same thing with like Dawn of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead was a reflection of like consumerism. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, without the U.S., the U.S. government system, I don't know if George would have made this great. He needed the problematic system to be able to make his art, which is very interesting. It's once again showing how you can take a problem and you can spin it and turn it into something that's really insightful.
I'm sure right now, like a lot of people are getting a lot of inspiration or a lot of. I mean, even though it's terrible what's going on right now, people are getting a lot of inspiration from what's going on, especially right now. So
I think it's really funny. The last time we like actually saw each other in real life, we were celebrating dystopian like culture, like style, and now we're like living in almost like a real dystopian world. I mean, the timeline really matched well with Blade Runner. Like, I mean, there are people with masks. Remember, like the cyberpunk people that came?
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, that's cool, And now it's like, yeah, it's just I go to the grocery store like that. It's normal, Yeah.
We've adapted as best we can right now.
Yeah.
What positive message would you give your fans out there?
I would definitely say that, like, I'm, the fan thing for me, it's like I'm like the biggest fan of like people that support my work, like first and foremost, and I just, once again, it's just cool to like meet people that have like seen things I've worked on and everything. So I'm just like a big thank you to anybody who supported me, watched my work, shared it. And I would just say that like, all these things we've been talking about, especially with like things that are upcoming for me, and the things that I've done up until this point, it's all been born out of just like unbridled enthusiasm and like a very, very like open heart to like essentially kind of failing at what you're trying to do, but like just rising up and continuing to figure out like how something is done and not being afraid of the unknown, because there's so many amazing things out there that you won't ever experience in life unless you really just like open that door and just run through it. So don't hesitate, don't wait, and don't be afraid, because it's going to be a journey to reach any sort of like level with a craft. It's going to take time. If it doesn't, then you're just not going to be prepared for how things actually work, because you have to become wiser and you have to have experience to be able to actually do really great things. It's one thing I've noticed. There's no like one way, like rise to the top, like it's not a lottery, you know what I mean? It's more than luck, for sure. I mean, there's part of it, it's the right time, right place, but mostly it's born of your own enthusiasm and your own inspiration. So don't stop and try things all the time. New things.
Exactly. Don't stop. Don't stop.
Don't stop. And, don't let your heartbeat stop, Like, if your heart is racing, that's not a bad thing.
Take chances and make things happen. I mean, like you were saying, if you don't do it, you'll probably just wonder what things would have been like if you had just taken the chances.
It really beats the wondering. The what if game is terrible, and you know, we're talking about life, and you have one chance in life to be able to do all this stuff, and yeah, it's just really, really good to give yourself you got to believe in yourself too, you know, definitely give yourself, I don't think people give themselves enough credit sometimes, or they just don't think they have it in them. But I've seen so many people, just, you know, I love being surprised by like somebody doing something. I think that's awesome. And then I'm like, oh, cool. Now I can try this out too. You know, and like I said, it's a collective spirit of enthusiasm and creation. And creating is like, you know, it's what makes me the happiest. And when I'm not creating, you know, I'm just not like the same person. It's really good to find that like balance.
Exactly right. Well, thank you so much for taking this time to sit with us today, Brad. Thank you to everybody out there for tuning in and watching us have this conversation. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube page as more interviews are on the way. Thank you so much, Brad, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Yes, sooner rather than later. Thank you so much, Jackson, for having me on board, and keep at it, man. Love what you're doing and love the creation that is occurring. So hope to see you down the road soon.
Definitely, definitely. And you know what? Dream it, build it, and let it grow. There you go.
Virtual high five for that one.
Virtual high five. You got it.
All right, man. Take care, dude.